Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Planet X News. It is April 2nd, 2020. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to get their notifications from the boob tube. And we'll go ahead and start jumping into some of this information. 24 hours ago, 48 hours ago. Let me correct myself. 2 days ago, I was waiting for this latest detection, and naturally, it would come at the end of the month in this Planet X 28-day orbital cycle. We're going to be discussing a lot more information other than this detection. I know it's been about a week since my last video, and even longer since my last live stream. But I have just been sitting back, watching everything that has been playing out in the media, on social media, on the internet, everything going on worldwide. So, not that I've been quiet, I've been pretty vocal, but not on the boob tube. I've noticed, over the course of the last 10 days, a lot of people are having their YouTube channels literally terminated because they are discussing the current situation that is, I hate to use the word, but plaguing the world. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Because I have a lot of information on this and, look, the boob tube's probably not going to like it, but fuck them. It is what it is. Like I said, a couple of days ago, I was waiting for this latest detection. It's not the clearest one, but me and Mark over at Wages World, we were taking a look at some of the coronagraphs, and we were waiting for the information to update. And there have been a couple of coronal mass ejections, CMEs, and it seems like the sun has started to pick up in activity. A recent article just came out, I think it was today, on space.com, and scientists are closely watching the sun as it's going to be coming out of this solar minimum. And that's going to probably take about, who knows, it could take 4 or 5 years, but we'll start to see a slow progression of activity on the sun. There was one sunspot that did pop up a few days ago. Nothing major to really talk about. I know a lot of people made a big deal out of it, but, just a sunspot. It really didn't produce anything and kind of faded away. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. I'm going to show you what I detected. And this time around, it was not easy to bring out the clarity because this coronal mass ejection was, let's just say it was once again very, very weird looking. Almost like a tornadic or tornado funnel. And, about 2 weeks ago, we saw the same identical thing. And all of my years of researching and watching coronal mass ejections on these coronagraphs, I've never seen these types of coronal mass ejections that have this very large funnel spiral shape to them. But under the circumstances, look, there is another factor creating the coronal mass ejections. And once again, these coronal mass ejections are coming like clockwork, right on time. They are coordinated with the passing of this, this Planet X object, as we call it. And as this object orbits our sun every 28 days, it's making 2 passes, one coming in, looping around, and one coming out. So people keep asking me, why is it that we only see this object on the left and on the right? Why can't we see it in different positions? Well, number one, that would be the positioning of the space cameras either on the LASCO coronagraph or the stereo coronagraph or the Secchi's attached to the stereo coronagraph. So those are our only two views. And the way this object comes upward, it does not eclipse the sun. Its angle is far below the sun, but as it comes up and it starts to loop around the sun, at the equatorial region, the middle point of the sun, that is where it is making its closest approach. Remember, it's on a very acute, eccentric, and elliptical orbit. So it's not going to pass right in front of the sun. And even if it did pass in front of the sun, it would not create an eclipse that we would be able to see here on Earth. I've explained this before, and I'll explain it again. Because this object is very, very close to the sun, very close, we would not see the eclipse because of the sun's intense light and intense rays. Plus, it would have to, all of that light has to come through the Earth's thick atmosphere. Now, why do we see eclipses with the moon? Well, the moon is only 238,000 miles away. So the moon is much closer to us. So our perception, we would actually see that eclipse. Because this object is 93 million plus miles away, and based on its size, it is much, much closer to the sun. So we're not going to ever see this object eclipse the sun. On top of that, the very acute angle. Once this object reaches the equatorial region of the sun, that's when we see this magnetic connection. This magnetic connection is producing the coronal mass ejections. Why? Because it's literally pulling plasma off of the sun. So, we really can't even classify these eruptions on the sun as true coronal mass ejections, because a coronal mass ejection occurs on the sun naturally. So as this object is passing by, that magnetic connection occurs, and it's literally pulling the plasma right off the sun, and then it creates that disturbance. And the coronal mass ejection is short-lived. And like I said in the beginning, the look of these coronal mass ejections is very, very different from what was observed, back in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. I just started to notice this probably around June or July of last year. And these coronal mass ejections, the funnel shape of these ejections has changed. So that's something that I'm still, beating around in my head and trying to figure out with very, very limited information. As this object loops back around the sun, and as it's coming back down, then we will see this object create another coronal mass ejection on the eastern limb of the sun. So again, on the right side, on the left side. That's the only place where we are going to ever see this object unless they put another camera on a space probe and give us another angle. Now, most of you know from my past live streams that there are two stereo spacecrafts, Stereo A, Stereo B. And one is on the left side, one is on the right side of the Earth at different positions. But Stereo B has been taken out of commission all the way back September 2014. Some of the best Planet X orbital video was captured in 2007. I've shown all of you the video. It clearly shows this object orbiting around the sun. And it only took, well, in that segment, it only took 7 days, but it wasn't the complete orbit, but you can clearly see it. So, not too long after that, that video was really not publicized until I got a hold of it in 2016 and started showing everybody that video. But in 2014, mysteriously, they took Stereo B out of commission. I think they turned it off for us, for public viewing. Reason being is because that would have given us 3 perspectives: Stereo A, Stereo B, and then the LASCO Coronagraph, which faces directly from the Earth to the sun. So we would have been able to see just about, I'd say, 2/3 of the sun. So we would have been capturing this object constantly, and we would be getting really, really good views of it, probably better than what I'm capturing now. But let's go ahead. I'm going to jump into here real quick, and I'll bring this up. Yeah, this one was pretty weird, man. Again, like I said, it's not the best photo capture. Very, very grainy on the Coronagraph, and this was on March 30th. As you can see right here, on the original, when I was watching the segmented video clip, it was only 36 frames long. That's it. Usually whenever they post the Coronagraph video clips, the day they post it, you'll get about anywhere from 20 to 40 frames. And then about 24 hours later, they will add more frames. Why they do that, I don't really know. But usually we'll get about 120, 130 frames after 24 to 36 hours. In this case, days later, we still have the same amount of frames. So I noticed something in that 36 frames. It wasn't much. But I said to myself, wait a minute. Let's look at the date. So when I looked at the date, I'm like, oh boy, it's the end of the month. This may be it. So what I had to do is I took a few screenshots. I video recorded the Coronagraph, and once again converted it into ultra high definition 4K, and then when I do that, I'm producing 120 frames compared to their little 36 frames. So it allows me to take much smaller increments when I'm trying to slow this down. It gives me a little bit of a better and clearer picture. So whenever I did that, man, it was a real pain in the ass this time. And usually this technique that I've developed, it works with perfection. But because of all of the graininess in the black, white, and gray composite difference image, it looked suspicious. So I decided, okay, let me change the color of the Coronagraph, and this is the burnt orange look that you see right here. And I tried, oh my God, I think I tried about a dozen different colors in my program so I can see this object clearly. I was able to see it before changing the colors, but it wasn't clear. It just looked like a little bit of a blob, and then it was gone because it showed up right at the end of the frames. So I only had 36 frames to work with, you know. And bingo, as soon as I changed it over to the burnt orange color, it popped out for 1 second. 1 second, and that's it. Reason being, it was on the last frame. So if they would have added more frames, maybe 30 to 50 more frames, we would have probably seen it coming further outward from the sun. And I've been checking every day, going back. And this coronal mass ejection that occurred, it hasn't even been listed. Okay, it's been several days now. It hasn't been listed on the Cactus program that detects coronal mass ejections. And we've been seeing this, probably for about the last 6 to maybe 6 to 9 months. They are not listing these coronal mass ejections. Reason being is they may not be considered real coronal mass ejections. So I don't know. You know, I'm not a NASA scientist. I do not work within these NASA heliospheric programs. Maybe they are trying to cover it up. Maybe they are deleting some of the footage. I mean, we've caught them doing that many times before. You know, deleting 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, 24 hours, several days worth of footage. Who the hell knows what NASA does? But as you can see it, the arrow's pointing right to it. So I could zoom in all the way. And you can see it right here. Now, as the video played through, I only got the last frame. That's it. They cut it off. But if they wouldn't have cut it off, we would have been able to see this object progressing. And it was progressing outward. Just like that. And why? Because that is the trajectory of the orbit. It was coming downward. Now, in approximately 12 days, 12 to 15 days, I would say more closer to the 12 days. I would say anywhere from April 12th to the 15th, we should probably see another coronal mass ejection. And then we will see it on the opposite side as it's making its way back up. So that halfway point at the sun's equator, that's going to be the activity zone. That's it. We're never going to see these coronal mass ejections occur in other areas when it's associated to this Planet X object now. Whenever the sun does come out of this solar minimum, we are going to see a lot of activity on the sun. We're going to see sunspots everywhere. Normally they will be just above or below the equatorial region of the sun. But we will also see a lot more coronal mass ejections, and we will see those large halo coronal mass ejections. And those are the ones that are natural, that form and explode from the sun. But at the same time, we may see larger coronal mass ejections associated with this object as it passes by, coming upward, looping around, and coming downward. Those large coronal mass ejections will always be seen on the eastern and western limbs of the sun. Always. That's never going to change. So I'm going to jump to the next still photograph, and that was zoomed in. So I'm going to zoom in on that, and we'll get a better look at it. So let me go ahead and jump out of here. And we'll pull up the zoomed in version here. And then we could zoom all the way in. Now this is already zoomed in. And that's some pretty good detail. I can't tell if this is the rocky version of this object, because, you know, over the past couple of months, I've been detecting two objects. Like I said before, one seems to be a little bit smaller and smoother, and I mean real smooth. And then the other one seems to be kind of rocky looking. It's very, very weird. You know, I study these photographs intensely for hours on end. And that's how I distinguish that, wait a minute, just wait a minute. This object can't change its appearance. And then we made detections in 1 week on the eastern and western limb of the sun. One looked rocky, the other looked smooth, very, very smooth. I went over all that information in my past live streams just a few weeks ago. If you guys want to go back and watch those, I would advise you to do so. But let's zoom in on this now. These photographs are also high definition, no pixels, none. So we can zoom in on it. And that's all the way. Little blurry, but no pixels. So whenever you're looking at it, you can clearly see that there is a very, very large spherical object just passing the sun. Now, I'm going to back off of this for a minute, and let's get it back to its regular size. This big black disk is not the size of the sun. It is the occulter. A lot of people ask me about it. Let me shift back to this photograph. That's not the one I wanted. So the black disk is called the occulter, and it is internal inside of the camera. And the reason why it's there is to block out the intense rays of the sun so they don't overload the camera, and we would never see anything. We would never see the coronal mass ejection because of the intense rays of the sun. That's why, you know, I tell people all the time, if you're taking photographs from Earth with your cell phone or a camera and you're pointing it directly at the sun, the only thing that you're going to see is that fake pink or blue Nibiru internal camera lens, a lens flare. That's all you're going to see. And that's the reason for the occulter. Now, on this occulter, unlike the Lasco C2, there's a white circle in the middle. This camera doesn't have that white circle. There's a medium-sized white circle in the middle of the occulter, and that is the size of the sun. So, I mean, I guess we could do something here real quick just to see if we can figure that out. Let's just pull this up. Let's see if we can insert, we could insert a circle. So that would be, we'll just save that as so that would be roughly the size of the sun, just roughly. And you can see that there is considerable distance between what is behind the occulter, which would be the sun, and the positioning of this object. So the object wasn't right up against the sun. Some people may actually think that, but it was a considerable distance away from the sun. Estimate, that could probably be anywhere from 500 to 600,000 miles away from the sun as it is passing by. And that is very, very close. Distances in space, 500,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles. In space, that's not far. Especially if you have an object that is moving very, very rapidly. This object does move very rapidly as it orbits around the sun. And it is what it is. And I think that as time goes on and we move out of this solar minimum and the sun is asleep slightly, and it is starting to wake up over this period of time, over the next few years, depending on how rapidly the sun wakes back up and moves into the solar maximum, I think that we are going to see some really, really wild times. There's no doubt about that. There may be times in the very, 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 very near future that the Earth is going to be under threat of coronal mass ejections, major X flares, and things of that nature coming directly towards the Earth. It may be caused by this object, and then again, it may be a natural occurrence coming from the sun. Only time will tell, and you know me, I will be right on top of it. But that is the latest detection. And again, it really wasn't much. I was actually very disappointed. I wanted to see something more clearly. But again, they limited the frames. There should have been at least 180 frames. Forget it. No way. Very, very limited information. And, it is what it is. Now, there was... There was this bad boy. I don't know if any of you guys saw this, but this was on... Damn it. This was on the 22nd. Now, this was about a week beforehand. And this has to be that smooth surfaced object. And we could zoom in on it. And this was a beautiful shot. Very, very little static on the coronagraphs. And a very minor coronal mass ejection. And it came out as a small stream, not this big massive explosion. So again, this coronal mass ejection really wasn't even detected by the Cactus program that detects coronal mass ejections. It did show up much later, and it was very, very minor. But we could zoom in. That's all I can zoom in on this particular photograph. And you can see this one seems to be a little bit smoother. It matches the object from the prior month and the prior month before that. And you can see the coronal mass ejections very, very tight, very, very close. And if you look, you could see this kind of like a bowling pin look. If you could just see the actual shape. Kind of looks like the fatter end of a baseball bat as it tapers upward and becomes wider. And that would be natural with an explosion of some kind. But right here, this black area, that's massive amounts of plasma coming from the sun. But it's not like the sun ejected it. This object literally pulled it away from the sun during its magnetic connection as it passes by. And, NASA has those two new space probes out there. And man, I know them some bitches are getting good footage. I know that they are getting great photographs in super high definition. And you know what? We'll never see those. We will never, ever see those. And isn't it very suspicious? Out of the past 2 decades, well, let's just say the last decade, the last 10 years, all of a sudden, with a lot of people watching the sun, watching our inner solar system, and now all of a sudden, they decide to put 2 space probes out there. One that has one specific orbit and another one that is a polar orbit, north to south, north to south. Yeah, the new solar polar orbiter. But we'll never, ever see any information from those probes. We will never see video. We will never, ever see photographs unless there's some kind of CGI photographs that NASA wants to use to publicize their space missions. But we'll never get hardcore evidence from those cameras like we do with the limited amount of public access that we have now. But I did. This was pretty wild looking photograph. This was captured on the 24th. This is an embossed image. Now, this is actually from the 22nd. I just did the work on this photograph 2 days later. And the reason why I embossed the photograph was not to see the detail on this object, but I wanted to see that weird looking funnel CME shape. Because remember what I said earlier, I've been watching coronal mass ejections for years and years and years. I've never seen them look like this. But now all of a sudden, over the past, 6 to 9 months, they've been looking like this. Let me give you the wide perspective of this real quick. It's better for me to look at them this way. Where the hell is it? Is it this one? Oh. Okay, this is also the embossed view, but this was, this was on the 20th as this was happening. And this was kind of a slow coronal mass ejection. It actually lasted for almost 48 hours as it slowly encompassed this object. But again, the reason why I embossed it was I wanted to see that weird looking funnel shape. And we can go ahead and zoom in from this point. And it is. It almost reminds me of a cup. You know, I mean, you can see the wider end here, and then it progresses and shrinks down naturally as it gets closer to the sun. But that is one of the weirdest funnel-looking, tornadic-looking coronal mass ejections that I've ever seen. We saw something very similar last month, where it had the same kind of shape, but it kind of opened up as the object went by. But we had more frames. We don't have those amount of frames. Let's get a closer view of this object. Let's get out of here. Where the hell am I? Here is a negative. And the reason why I produced it into a negative is I wanted to see if I could see more detail. And again, you know, you can see now without embossing that photograph, you kind of lose a lot of detail in what this weird looking funnel coronal mass ejection looked like. So it's not that I was trying to deceive anybody. But I was trying to bring out more detail so I can see what the hell was going on, because these explosions on the sun, these CMEs, they're looking really weird. And you can see our object right here. Now remember, this is in a negative image. And you can see it's right on the leading edge. This black area here would be the complete opposite of the white, meaning it's a very hot area. The only thing that I could possibly think of is that would be a very, very large band of plasma that was literally being, sucked away from the sun and caught up in this very weird funneling looking coronal mass ejection. I mean, look, man, I've been stirring my mind on this now for over a week. I've gone back through coronal mass ejections in the archives going back 3, 4, 5 years. Haven't seen anything like it, Nothing like it. This is just the regular view. No change is made whatsoever. No color changes, no embossing, no nothing. Just the natural look of a screen capture, and converted over to a higher definition so there's no pixels. And again, you can see that weird looking funnel shape. And our object right on the bottom leading edge. Now, again, you'll see that band. Now that we're not using a negative, you'll see that band as white. And that would be more intense. And it could be a large band of plasma that is literally trailing behind this object as it is moving away from the sun. And these were pretty spectacular pictures. I was pretty impressed with what came out this time around. And again, I've done nothing at all to these photos. They're not doctored, as the troll babies may say. Do 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 do. Do do do. And this is just the negative. We'll pull that all the way back to its regular perspective. Again, this was on March 20th, going into the 21st. And again, this is the negative. And you have to admit, man, come on. When you're looking at that, that has to be one of the weirdest damn photographs that you've seen. And again, we keep seeing these odd shapes dealing with these CMEs. Let me just revert back here real quick. Where the hell was that one that looked crazy looking? Where the hell did I put that? We've had so many really good detections over the last couple of months. And I even said that we were going to have some very, very active times the first 90 days of the year, January, February, March. And that's exactly what has occurred. And this one here, this is what I was referring to as that smoother looking object, which makes me definitely think that there are two of them. And you could see how smooth it is. It doesn't have that rocky look to it. And again, in a 7-day period, capturing one object on the western limb of the sun and then another object on the eastern limb of the sun, 7 days apart, looking completely different. So that leads me to believe that during this 90-day period where the Earth is positioned in its orbit around the sun, giving us a different perspective, dealing with the orbit of this object, which is not going to change, and the long 365-day orbit of the Earth. Naturally, our perspective from the positions of the cameras on the spacecrafts will change. I know that may be hard for some of you to visualize and capture in your mind, but I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Matter of fact, right at the end of December, I said to Mark over at Wages World, it was right towards the end of the year, and I told him, I said, look, be prepared, because with my experience, all of the years watching what was happening, we're going to see a 90-day period, even possibly a 120-day period, meaning 4 months of spectacular captures, January, February, March, and possibly April. And what has happened? Just that. January, February, March, and now leading into April. So we'll see what happens in April. But that 90-day period produced some of the best photo captures that I have ever seen. And look, the evidence is there. The proof is there. There is no doubt. The big question is, what are the consequences going to be on the Earth? We see that eventually there is going to be widespread mass destruction with earthquakes. No doubt about it. The big earthquake that just went off the other day, that morning on my YouTube channel, under the community where you could just post a picture and, you could share links and things of that nature. Matter of fact, I'll show you, because I said that morning that the Earth was being hit by several large streams of, some was solar wind, some was related to the smaller coronal mass ejections, but they were coming in waves, and you could see it. And one large one just passed right through the Earth. Usually takes about 24 to 48 hours for those particles to literally penetrate through the Earth's crust, down into the mantle, stir things up, increase the pressure, increase the heat, and bingo, we have a large earthquake. Well, very early that morning, I made a post on my YouTube channel in that community section stating just that we should be on the lookout for a large earthquake, magnitude 6.0 plus. And bingo, what happened about, I don't know how many hours. Let's check. Let's check real quick. See if I could get in there and find it. So if you go to your YouTube channel, or you go down here where it says community, and I could click on that, and here I could share articles, I could share photographs, I could share little GIF images, I could create a post, and you guys will see it in your YouTube notifications right up here. And you could comment, you could give me a thumbs up, you could give me a thumbs down, whatever you want to do. As of lately, I've been sharing all of my articles from USA Headline News from my website. I've been doing a lot of deep research on what's happening around the world. And it's pretty eye-opening and very disturbing. But getting back to that post, let's go see what the timing was here. Yeah, and I've been busy making some really crazy looking shirts for my shirt website. Okay, here it was right here, 2 days ago. Here was the actual earthquake, and I literally saw this earthquake go off in Utah, I think it was 12 minutes after it was actually detected. I just happened to look at my earthquake map, and it was flashing red. And I looked at it and I said, "Holy hell! Look at the size of that." And I posted the small clip from the USGS. Now, here's what I posted earlier that morning. A large swath of solar wind blew by the Earth about 48 hours ago, and another round is coming through. We may see numerous earthquakes larger than magnitude 6.0. We'll see what happens. That was very, very, very early in the morning before the sun even came up. Because whenever we see these situations like this, see that green zone right there? You'll see it pass by right there. That's what passed by. And that was pretty intense. And when I see things like that, I know the larger earthquakes are going to pop off. And I sure as hell didn't think that it would pop off in Utah, but it sure as hell did. So you could see on the date, it was around the 28th that it passed by. Remember what I said. Normally when these large swaths of these heavily charged particles pass by and pass through the Earth, takes normally about 48 hours for those particles to really start banging around and bouncing around inside like particles do, and creating that heat and that disturbance within inside of the Earth. And it's going to catch a weaker point, and that weak point was Utah. And when did it go off? Bingo. Right on the 31st. So as you can see, it had passed by around the 28th and the 29th. 48 hours later, boom, there it was. So, whenever we get into showing you what space weather is doing, if you guys are really interested in continuing to learn, I don't do very many space videos anymore because I just thought that people get bored watching me talk about the magnetosphere, the magnetopause, the solar wind. But the fact of the matter is, folks, space weather is very important. It is as important as our normal weather prediction. This is what happens when space weather affects the Earth. That's what happens. A large earthquake of that magnitude, a 6.5, striking very near a heavily populated area or underneath a major metropolitan city area, can cause widespread mass destruction and loss of life. So the space weather videos tend not to be that interesting, but they are very important. Very important. But you do have to listen to somebody that knows what they're talking about. There are some bozos out there on the boob tube in YouTube land that show you the magnetopause and the solar wind and the magnetosphere models on the ISWA site. They don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They don't really understand the science. They just think it looks weird. And then they just make up a damn story and they tell you in their video. And it means nothing at all. So understanding the science is very important. If you're going to explain things to your subscribers, your followers, your viewers, then you should at least understand scientifically what you're looking at. The majority of these folks They really don't. You know, people send me links to their videos all the time, and I just look at it and I just roll my eyes. I wish I could roll my eyes in the back of my head all the way so I don't have to look at the nonsense. And then they scare people because of their wording, and their tactics are awful. And I've been seeing a lot of that shit lately too. But yeah, that was a pretty close call for Idaho. And, you know, this earthquake did not get that much airtime with the mainstream media. Why? Ho ho! We all fucking know why. Because the great deception has come upon us. Yeah, we all know what that is. But yeah, folks, you know, I have been posting a lot lately. In the on my community posts, and it's a faster way for me to keep in touch with you guys, show you some things. You know, a few people have sent me some emails on shirts that they wanted me to make for them or for their group. There was one group, it's a 5G group, and they wanted me to make them some shirts for their group. I've done it before for a couple other Facebook groups that have members that, you know, they want a shirt, sweatshirts, hoodies, whatever. And I did this one the other day. 5G, the silent killer. Made some new Planet X News shirts. Excuse me. And then, you know, I made some other shirts for the t-shirt website. And one lady said, "Can you knock it off with the skulls?" Man, you know what? That's all people do nowadays, is bitch and complain about every damn thing. First things first, it's my t-shirt website. I will make whatever the hell I want. You don't have to buy it. You don't even have to look at it. Maybe you could buy one and wipe your ass with it when you run out of toilet paper. But my God, stop bitching about everything. It's my t-shirt website. I like skulls. It's my theme. Damn it. I've said before, you know, I've got skull tattoos. I love skulls. This is a skull. Everybody has one. The paint job theme on my Harley is black with ghosted skulls. You know, when my grandmother was alive, and I used to wear, you know, sleeveless shirts, and I'd walk into her house, she would tell me, "Oh, God damn it, Scotty, cover up those arms. I hate looking at those skull tattoos, especially that one that looks, it looks like it's looking at me." And she would cover her eyes, and I would crack up. But yeah, you know, I made a bunch of new shirts and stuff like that. And then, because that lady complained about me making my own skull jerseys for my own t-shirt website, I just wanted to be a little spiteful. So the very next the very next shirt that I made was this one right here. People say I act like I don't give a shit. I'm not acting. You know. But guess what? The lady that complained, wow. You know, the sale of some of these t-shirts has been pretty good. And I bet you that pisses you off too, to see Scott make a whole $5. People are pathetic, man. You know, people are a real fucking joke out there. You know, you begrudge somebody for making a $5 profit on a shirt. You know, a couple of days ago, check this out. I found this to be quite funny. A few people inboxed me and they said, hey, man, why don't you make some quarantine jerseys? And one person even said, hey, why don't you make a shirt about, the toilet paper crisis. I said, man, you know what? That's a good idea. I'll just do it as a joke, And this quarantine and chill. I had one friend of mine back here in Pittsburgh that said, yeah, man, we're all on quarantine. He goes, I came up with a saying, quarantine and chill. That's what I'm telling all my friends. Just stay home, chill out. You're under quarantine. So it was a kind of a throw off from the street terminology of Netflix and chill. You get it? But anyways, I created the shirt, posted it on my t-shirt website, and wow, man, I posted it all over Facebook, and people went, wow, I think I sold like 10 of them in one day. This shirt right here, I survived the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. I thought that shirt was hilarious. One of my subscribers saw this, and he has 5 family members, him and his wife and 3 kids. And he bought 5 of them for his whole family. He thought it was fantastic. He thought it was the best thing compared to sliced bread. But you know what? There was one twisted woman, again, that left a comment under this shirt, and she said, I can't believe that you're out there making money off of this situation. Oh, shit. Hey, look, I'm not here to make people happy. I'm not here to appease people, And like I told her, I said, look, why don't you spend the $25, buy the damn shirt, wipe your ass with it whenever you run out of toilet paper. Yeah, and I did a couple of these jerseys. People were asking me, Then I made some pandemic baby back ribs. Since, we're all closed up and you can't go out and eat in your restaurants, your local restaurants and things of that nature. And, there was a big tornado that whipped through Jonesboro, Arkansas. Boy, that was a bad mamma jamma right there, boy. They got kind of lucky. It could have done a lot more damage than it did. And unfortunately, it did cause some destruction, some injuries. And, that tornado season, it's coming around real quick. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of this tornado activity in the weeks to come. In this region, the other tornado alley that kind of stretches from eastern Texas right across the Panhandle over to Florida. So that would be Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Tennessee, all the way up in that stretch, Alabama, even over into Georgia and the Carolinas. That's going to be a pretty active zone again this year. Reason being is the way that this jet stream is flowing. I don't see any changes in it whatsoever, but it is bringing up these very strange, very long lines of storm activity stretching all the way from the South Pacific near south of Mexico, straight across Mexico, up into Texas, barely squeaking by the Gulf of Mexico, and then a straight line, straight across these areas, these states that I just mentioned. As that comes upward and the cooler air comes down, boom, they're just hitting like a bullseye right in these areas. We saw this last year. Remember? There was a lot of destruction in these states. A lot. People died. People were injured. People lost everything. And we saw this the year before also, 2018-19. We will see it again in 2020 because the jet stream is completely out of whack. The jet stream, southern hemisphere, is broken. It is broken up. It is destroyed. I don't know in our lifetime if we will ever see a normalized jet stream again. I mean, matter of fact, you guys know I'm a weather watcher, and just before I went on the air, I was taking a look at a current situation that's brewing right now. And look at the size of this freaking system right here. I'll let this load, but this is off the Go 16. This is current right now. And we continue to see these very strange looking cyclonic storm systems. And as of lately, they've all been in this upper northern Atlantic region for the last 2 months. You could see this storm right now. Let me change something here real quick. Let's get 18, and we'll bump this to 30. This will give us a few more frames. Now, I was checking on this storm. It's not bringing a ton of moisture, but what it's bringing is a ton of wind. And as we pan in a little closer, you will see the states that are going to get battered. And I have a friend of mine that lives in Boston, and I called him up earlier and I says, hey man, I said, are you experiencing any high winds there in Boston? He goes, hell yeah. He goes, I lost my favorite Patriots baseball cap. It blew off my head, and it's gone. I couldn't get it. And I said, oh, that's just, I hate the Patriots. So I made fun of him for a little while. But just offshore, wind speeds up to 50 miles an hour, and over the next 24 hours, the wind is going to be battering the Cape. You could see down here, Long Island, all of this area as it rotates in. They will probably have worse, heavier winds just a little north of the eye of this. It looks like a damn hurricane, doesn't it? I mean, we've been seeing these all winter long in the area of the North Atlantic. Absolutely crazy, intense storms. And this one probably won't do any damage. It will definitely create some pretty high surf, especially when it gets into high tide. But you know what? Nobody's going to be on the beaches because they're all quarantined, aren't they? Yeah. I made one jersey a couple days ago. I want to show you this. This is how stupid this situation is becoming. Let me show you guys this. You see that shirt right there? Scamdemic, pandemic. I made that shirt. Somebody suggested it in an email they sent me. And they even, gave me a little bit of artwork, which I didn't use, but I used their, their little funny saying, scamdemic, pandemic. And I actually sold a few of these. Posted it up on Facebook, and it was up for about 1 day. And then FacePuke pulled it They literally deleted it. And they sent me, one of their face puke notices that this t-shirt goes against their community standards. Why? No explanation, but now using the word scamdemic, which is even not in the dictionary. It's a made-up word, scamdemic, pandemic. Wow. Those snowflakes at Facebook, their moderators, little pimple-faced pukes. One thing I have noticed, getting into